It's our first year of growing in our new passive solar greenhouse, and we've made mistakes and we've learned a lot. And in this video, I want to share those mistakes and learnings with you. Welcome back, friends. Welcome back to the homestead. And of course, as I've just said, we're in our new passive solar greenhouse. Now, we've made mistakes, as I said, and we've learned a lot through this process. And I think that was an important step. I never believed that in the first year everything was going to be a great success. Although, to be fair, it has been exceeded our expectations in terms of what we've grown in here and how well it's grown. However, can we do better? Absolutely we can. And if you're considering building a passive solar greenhouse, some of these points that I'm going to raise are things that you're going to need to consider as well, and they can easily be overlooked. So don't overlook them. Watch the video, see the mistakes you made, and learn from them as well. Some of these things can be put into place if you're not in just any greenhouse. They are maybe general things, but predominantly it's specifically to this setup that we've got here and this passive solar greenhouse. So the number one thing is what you need to consider, actually what you can grow, or what is most suited to this kind of passive solar setup. The reason I say that is because, as we know, we've got just one side of glass and it faces south, so all the light comes in this way. That's how it works. But that requires some thought process as to what you grow. Now, there's lots of things you can grow in a greenhouse: tomatoes, peppers, cucumbers, gherkins, aubergines, melons. I think all these kind of hot loving type fruits, sweet potatoes even, that we've grown here. And when you can't grow everything unless you've got a really massive one. But what you do grow, you need to think about where you're going to put it. And this is the mistake, the first mistake that we made, is we wanted to grow a variety of things, but we didn't give full consideration to how they grow and where they're best placed because of that. Now, behind me you can see remnants of vines from cucumbers, and they grew really well in here, but because of the shape of the greenhouse and because of their really big leaves, I mean, when you sow everything and plant everything, they'll come out like little nice seedlings. You think, oh, wonderful, put that there and that there. But we don't give a lot, we didn't give enough consideration to how they grow and how big they grow and how much light that's going to block out. So we put some, we thought we'll put them down that end, great, all together, but we didn't really consider about which side was best. And basically, because of the tilt of the greenhouse, you want your biggest crops with the biggest leaves at the furthest at the back as possible. We didn't do that, so we ended up with big vines back there, which were blocking light to the back of this side where we had tomato plants. So put those at the back, and then you want a kind of sliding scale of height. So big vining tomatoes at the back here. We put our peppers down here, as you can see. That worked really well. And then as these things grow, you can then look at more that you put on in the understory, as it were, in the lower sections of the greenhouse. So we naturally, we put some sweet potatoes back there. We put some potatoes, normal potatoes, just to fill a space at the front there. They're not going to grow that high off the ground, so they're not going to. By now, your vines, as the year goes on, the vines are growing, all the leaves are taken off the bottom, and you've got all this space on the understory right down the bottom to plant stuff there and start using that space again. Initially, they'll all be fighting for the same space, so you need to wait and be a bit patient. But you need to consider. The main point is you need to consider how they're going to grow, what they're going to look like when they're fully grown, and what light and space are they going to take up, both vertically and horizontally. That's number one. Number two is the varieties that you grow. We found, specifically with tomatoes, that some varieties like it more in here than others. Now, that is something that could be said about any environment. any soil, anywhere in the world. Whether it's unique to this greenhouse setup, I'm not particularly sure, but it is something you need to consider, and obviously that takes time to learn. But when you're picking your varieties, and picking up on that other point as well, you need to look really carefully about the conditions that they like and how they grow. With your tomatoes, specifically looking at tomatoes and picking up on the first point as well, in varieties, we've got determinate, mid-determinate and indeterminate. Your determinate, which are only going to grow about this high, no point growing those at the back. Grow those at the front. Make sure you know what they are. All tomatoes look the same when they're sown. They look the same, but they won't grow the same. We made a mistake of putting a couple of determinates accidentally at the back here. Should have taken more consideration about that in terms of variety. Looking really carefully. We want those big varieties at the back. These ones that are going to crop nicely and consistently, and things like our San Mazzanos, Italian tomatoes, we want those at the back. There's no point having them down here where they're going to want to grow and vine up. We've got some examples at the back there that have we've really let them go really, and they've grown some amazing vines. Now it's okay at that end in our setup because we don't have a second bed here because there's a workspace, so it can grow up and over, no problem at all. Good placing. It's serendipitous, I should add. We didn't specifically plan it there, but that's how you've let them grow. These kind of, I don't know if you can see them down here, these clearly two determinates, they could have gone at the front there rather than taking up this space. We want some mid-determinates here which are going to grow so high and then stop. We don't want some small determinates, and we certainly don't want them here in this back row. We want to utilise that vertical space. So that's looking at your varieties really carefully when you're growing them, and labelling carefully and knowing exactly what they are when they go in. Some people are better than that than others, but I think it's really vitally important with this passive solar setup where you plant them, because you've got to have those heights right. So that was the second point. The third point is about being, I think, a bit ruthless. If you do see that you have made a mistake going through the year, then change it. You've got time to change it. Don't sort of go, oh, never mind, we'll learn next year. Well, is an element of that's what we did. But for example, we accidentally put a bush tomato down there in the back row. Talk about the most inappropriate placing. I just yanked it out and put it somewhere else, and then found, and we were well into June. They wouldn't have gone into late May because of our season, early June. And then we were away. I think we came back, and it's probably July before we realised. So I just yanked it out and found another tomato plant really late, put it in and let it grow up, indeterminate, and put the bush somewhere else. Be ruthless. When I realised what was happening with those cucumbers at the back there, and melons, I just made a decision, pulled one of the melon plants out, stripped the leaves off one of the cucumber plants because we had other ones, let that light come through to the back here, and yeah, it was quite ruthless really. Could have pulled the plant out totally, I suppose, but we like to have the vines go up and then grow back down again. And then they can actually sprawl along the floor, so that's fine for them to grow along the floor, but not we wanted those leaves out of the way. They're all dying off now because it's the end of the season, but I think do be ruthless, and in this setup specifically, really, really ruthless. All the best gardeners kill the most plants, really, because of their ruthlessness. It leads to better success, so be ruthless. Point number 4 was preparing for success. This has all been kind of a bit of a big experiment, and we perhaps didn't prepare enough for the success we were going to have. Take the vining tomatoes, for example. We hadn't really considered, how we've never had such a good year of tomatoes, and we hadn't considered what do we do with them when they really grow high up. How do we cut them back? What do we want to do with them? turns out. Also with the pepper plants, we had really good success with pepper plants. A lot of them fell over, and some of them broke. We never expected them to grow that big. We never expected them, we didn't really appreciate that actually. Whilst it was the best place to put them down there, that they would love it down there and grow really big. So we were victims of our own success, and we hadn't planned for that, what to do. Next year we'll be on top of it. One of the tips I think with the big vining plants is if you haven't got the room to stack up, I think my advice would be to cut them off at a place where you're happy, and then grow another sucker out from the bottom. Let all that fruit grow and ripen. Obviously it's the first fruit, so they'll ripen off. The plant won't be of any use, but the new sucker that comes from the bottom will grow some fruit. There's a good example down there. I can see some really nice tomatoes that are grown off a sucker, and I think next year we will train the plants more in that fashion to really maximise. Then we can maximise this horizontal space as well, particularly at the front here, where at the back here we've got this space free now because all the fruit's finished, all the leaves are finished. We can then grow new shoots up from this second row, really. First row peppers, second row, third and fourth, and then that will take up the light from there and will grow more fruit. So a technical point, but it's an important point again if you're growing in this passive solar setup. So that was my fourth point, is being prepared for success and having some strategies to cope with your success. And point number 5 was pollinators. There's a lot of talk at the moment around the world about pollinators and how they're being affected by farming and different things that are going on, really. Pesticides, all that kind of stuff. We've noticed this year, despite having our own bees, a distinct lack of pollinators generally. And in a passive solar setup, where you're particularly towards the end of the year, where you're trying to keep heat in, you've got windows and doors closed, you need to consider how you're going to get those pollinators in and stuff pollinated without you having to take over a manual pollination, which you can do with tomatoes and a little paintbrush. So we next year will be planting more flowers inside to encourage whatever pollinators are around into the greenhouse. We hadn't done a good job of that last year, and also perhaps outside along the front of the greenhouse here as well. More plants to encourage pollinators over and then entice them into the greenhouse to do the job that they do. So yeah, pollinators, encouraging them in, flowers, which also can work good as companion plants, fill up that, we talked about utilising that lower understory element. Flowers, lower French marigolds, that kind of thing, which also are good companion plants to discourage some pests. Get them in the understory there, and you should have more pollination going on. Whilst we had great harvest and great fruit, we think we could have had more if we had had more and better pollination. So this video is really about plants, and perhaps I'll do another video about the technical aspects of what went right and wrong with the greenhouse. I mean, most of it went right, to be fair, but there are a couple of things that we could have perhaps done better or different. So there are my 5 tips and failures and things that you need to look out for with growing with a passive solar greenhouse. I hope you found the video of interest. If you did, there's lots of other videos on our channel which I'm sure you'll find of equal interest and helpful to you. Do check them out. Thanks for watching and being a part of what we're doing here. I look forward to seeing you in another video very soon. Bye for now.